You walk into your own home tonight. Your kids are scattered. One on the phone, one watching something on a screen, your wife staring at another screen, nobody looking at anybody. You sit at the table. Nobody says grace. The food gets cold while everyone finishes what they're doing. When you finally eat, the only sound is chewing and the TV in the background. This is not a home. This is a waiting room. You tell yourself it's fine. Everyone's busy. Everyone's tired. You'll connect tomorrow, next week, when things calm down. But things never calm down. And tomorrow you'll sit at the same table with the same silence. And your children will learn that this is what love looks like. Distance, coexistence. Bodies in proximity, but souls miles apart. And one day you will wonder why they don't call, why they don't visit, why when they do come home it feels like strangers meeting in a hotel lobby. You will wonder when it happened, when you lost them. It happened at the table, years ago, one silent meal at a time. In 1918, a young Capuchin friar named Francesco Forgione arrived at a monastery in San Giovanni Rotondo, southern Italy. He would become known to the world as Padre Pio. For 50 years, he bore the wounds of Christ in his hands. For 50 years, people came from across the earth to confess to him. For 50 years, he saw things other men could not see. But among all the visions, all the miracles, all the supernatural gifts God gave this man, one truth haunted him more than anything else. He saw what was happening to families. He saw what was coming. In the town of Pietrelcina, where Francesco grew up in 1887, his family attended Mass every single day. Every single night they gathered. Everyone. His father Grazio, his mother Giuseppa, Francesco and his siblings. They prayed the rosary together, out loud, every bead, every mystery. They abstained from meat 3 times a week in honor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. They told Bible stories. They ate together. They talked. They prayed. This was not special. This was normal. This is what families did. Francesco's mother, Giuseppa, could not read. His father could not read. His grandparents could not read. Nobody in that house had formal education. But they knew something more important than reading. They knew God. They knew their children needed more than food, more than clothes, more than a roof. They needed to know they belonged to something bigger than themselves. That table was sacred ground, not because of the food, not because of the furniture, because of what happened there. The family stopped. They looked at each other. They folded their hands. They spoke to God before they spoke to each other. And in that moment, they remembered who they were. Not just individuals living in the same house. A family, bound by blood and bound by prayer. Grazio Forgione worked in the fields from dawn until dark. His hands were cracked, his back bent. He made barely enough to feed his children. When Francesco was 10, Grazio left Italy and went to America. New York, Pennsylvania, worked in factories, sent money home, did not see his family for years, all so his children could eat. But before he left, he made sure the rosary stayed. He made sure Giuseppa kept the family praying, because he understood what most fathers today have forgotten. You can give your children everything and lose them, or you can give them nothing but God and save them. When Grazio came back to Pietrelcina years later, Francesco was already in the monastery, already on the path to priesthood, already marked by God. Grazio did not get to see his son ordained, but he did see the fruit of what he and Giuseppa planted. Not success, not wealth, holiness. A son who knew God was real because his parents showed him every single night at the table. If you value documented stories about faith and saints like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Bernard Ruffin's biography, Padre Pio, The True Story, published in 1991 by Our Sunday Visitor, and from the Capuchin archives at San Giovanni Rotondo, documented in the epistolary collections of Padre Pio's letters compiled between 1970 and 1999, available through the Padre Pio Foundation. These are not generic church sources. These are the actual letters, the actual testimonies of people who lived with him, confessed to him, watched him bleed. Now back to the information. When Francesco became Padre Pio, he never forgot what his mother and father gave him at that table. Not luxury, not entertainment, presence, prayer, the voice of family speaking to the voice of God. He entered the Capuchin order in 1903. He was ordained in 1910, and even as a priest, even in the monastery, he carried the rosary constantly. One witness said, "You never saw him without beads in his hands, in the hallways, on the stairs, in the sacristy, going to confession, coming back, always the rosary." Another friar said, when Padre Pio could barely talk at the end of his life, when people came to him desperate, all he did was show them the rosary. Always. Always. But here's what terrified him. In the 1950s, a new invention entered Italian homes: television. By the 1960s, even the Capuchin monasteries had television rooms. Padre Pio never went in, not once. Someone asked him why. He pointed downward. He told his spiritual children television was destroying families, not because of what was on it, because of what it replaced. He said instead of talking to each other, families sit and stare at a box. The voices stop. The prayers stop. The presence stops. People thought he was being extreme. After all, television was bringing information, entertainment, culture. What was wrong with a little relaxation after a hard day of work? What harm could it do? Padre Pio saw the harm, every day in confession. People coming to him saying their marriages were cold, their children distant, their homes empty even when everyone was there. And when he asked them, when was the last time you sat together and prayed, they could not remember. He did not blame the television, he blamed the choice to let something else speak louder than God, the choice to fill the silence with noise instead of prayer, the choice to give presence to a machine instead of to each other. This was not nostalgia, this was prophecy. Padre Pio saw what was coming. He saw the addiction. He saw families who could not sit in a room together for 5 minutes without turning something on. He saw children growing up thinking that love meant being in the same room while everyone looked at different screens. He saw the death of conversation, the death of attention, the death of family as a spiritual unit. After World War II, his nephew Ettore came to him about opening a cinema, a movie house. Padre Pio's response was immediate. You don't want to contribute to the propagation of evil. People thought he was being dramatic, paranoid, old-fashioned. But Padre Pio saw souls. He could read them in the confessional. He knew when someone was lying. He knew when demons were near. And he was watching something happen that no one else was seeing. Silence was entering homes, not the silence of prayer, the silence of distance. A man from America named Joe Peterson visited San Giovanni Rotondo in 1960. He asked Padre Pio what he thought about television. Padre Pio said the man who invented refrigeration went to heaven. Then he pointed down. The man who invented television, he said, went the other way. Joe Peterson was confused. Padre Pio explained. Refrigeration preserves food. Food brings families together. Television separates them. It puts people in the same room but keeps them alone. This is not about technology. This is about presence. This is about whether you are actually there. In 1950, Padre Pio started organizing prayer groups. He told people they needed to gather, not just on Sundays, monthly, to pray together, because the world had stopped praying. He said it directly. Today's society does not pray. That is why it is falling apart. He saw it in confession. Husbands who had stopped speaking to their wives. Children who no longer knew their fathers. Families living under the same roof like strangers. And when he asked when was the last time you prayed together, they looked at him like he was speaking another language. The prayer groups were not social clubs. They were not coffee meetings with some prayers tacked on at the end. They were spiritual combat units, people gathering once a month, Mass, confession, rosary, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, hours of prayer, together, out loud, in community. Why? Because Padre Pio understood that individual prayer is necessary but not sufficient. You can pray alone in your room every day and still lose your family. Because love is not just a private feeling, it is a shared commitment. And that commitment must be renewed in the presence of others, in the presence of God. The first statutes were written in 1951. Simple rules. Attend monthly, do not miss, pray for the Pope, pray for the sick. Pray for each other's families, receive the sacraments together, make your faith visible, make your love tangible. By the time Padre Pio died in 1968, there were thousands of these groups, all over Italy, all over Europe, all over the world. People who had never met praying the same rosary at the same time in different languages, bound by Padre Pio's vision, bound by the knowledge that prayer is not optional, it is survival. He said prayer is the best weapon we have, the key that opens the heart of God. But you cannot pray alone and expect your family to stay together. You have to pray as a family. You have to make time sacred. You have to sit at the table and speak to heaven before you speak to each other. One of his spiritual daughters, a woman named Margarita Tresca, started writing to him in 1917. She had 4 children. Her husband worked long hours. She felt like she was losing them, not to tragedy, not to sickness, to distance, to the slow drift that happens when presence becomes optional. Padre Pio wrote back, "Make your home a chapel. Gather your children every night. Pray the rosary. Do not let one day pass without this, not one day. If you are tired, pray tired. If they complain, pray anyway. If you feel like you're talking to the wall, keep talking. God is listening, and your children are watching." She obeyed. Years later, she wrote to him again. She said it saved her family, not from poverty, not from sickness, from distance, from the slow death of forgetting each other. Her children did not become saints. They became faithful. They became present. They learned that love requires discipline, that family is not automatic, that you have to choose it every single day. And it started with one mother who decided to stop making excuses and start making time. Another spiritual child, a man named Carlo Campanini, was a famous actor, comedian, lived in Rome, traveled constantly, had fame, had money, had everything except peace. He went to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1939 to see Padre Pio. He confessed. Padre Pio looked at him and said, "You need to go to Mass every day and pray the rosary every day. That is your penance." Carlo thought he was joking. Every day? He traveled for work. He performed at night. He had rehearsals, meetings. When was he supposed to find time for daily Mass and a daily rosary? Padre Pio did not negotiate. Every day. Or do not bother coming back. Carlo obeyed. It was not easy. It was not convenient. He had to wake up earlier, skip parties, turn down invitations, make choices that confused his friends and irritated his colleagues. But he did it, every single day for 29 years until Padre Pio died. And then he kept doing it for the rest of his life. Why? Because it changed him. Not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly, steadily. He became a man who knew what mattered. A man who could sit at the table with his family and be present. A man who did not need noise because he had learned to hear God in silence. This is the thing Padre Pio understood that we have forgotten. Love does not survive on silence. It survives on attention, on voices raised in prayer, on hands folded together, on eyes that meet across the table before the meal, on words spoken to God in front of your children so they know there is something bigger than them, something that holds the family together, even when everything else falls apart. In 1968, Padre Pio's health was failing. He was 81. His body was breaking down. On September 20th, 2 days before he died, he gave one of his final messages. He told the people around him, "Love Our Lady and make her loved. Recite the rosary and recite it always. Recite it as much as you can." Why the rosary? Why not something else? Because the rosary is what his mother taught him. At the table in Pietrelcina, when he was a boy who did not understand why it mattered. It was the first prayer of his family, the glue that held them, and he knew if families stopped praying it together, they would stop being families. On September 23rd, 1968, early in the morning, Padre Pio made his last confession. He renewed his Franciscan vows. He held his rosary. He tried to pray the Hail Marys out loud, but did not have the strength, so he whispered, "Jesus, Mary, Jesus, Mary." Around 2:30 in the morning, he said, "I see two mothers, his mother, Giuseppa, and the Virgin Mary." Then he stopped breathing. The rosary was still in his hands. When they found him, they noticed his stigmata wounds had disappeared. 50 years of bleeding, gone, clean skin, as if God had taken back the suffering and said, "You're done. You did what I asked." But the truth he left behind is still here, still waiting, still sharp. Every time you sit at the table and say nothing, you're teaching your children that presence does not matter. Every time you let the screens talk louder than your voice, you are telling them that attention is not sacred. Every time you skip the prayer before the meal because you're tired or late or uncomfortable, you are showing them that God is optional. And they believe you. They believe that love is silence, that family is proximity, that home is just a building where people sleep and eat and scroll until they leave. This is what Padre Pio saw coming. This is why he said society is falling apart. Not because of war, not because of politics, because of what happens at the table, or what does not happen. Padre Pio's family was poor. They could not read. They had no electricity, no running water, no entertainment. But every night they prayed. And that made them rich. Your family has everything they did not have, except the one thing that mattered. In the 1940s, Pope Pius XII made a request. He asked Catholics everywhere to form groups and pray together monthly, to receive the Eucharist, to pray the Rosary. He said the world was moving away from God, and without prayer, the Church would lose the faithful. Padre Pio heard this and immediately told his spiritual children, "Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's be the first to respond." He organized prayer groups all over Italy, then all over Europe, then the world. By 1968, there were thousands of them, groups of people gathering once a month, praying together. Not because they felt like it, because they knew it was life or death. The first statutes of these groups were written in 1951. The rules were simple. Attend Mass together, pray the Rosary together, confession, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. Do this every month, do not miss it. Your soul depends on it. Padre Pio told them, prayer penetrates the heart of God and obtains the graces needed. Without prayer, everything falls apart. He was not talking about prayer as a feeling. He was talking about prayer as discipline, as commitment, as a family gathering and saying, we will not let this world take us. We will not let distance win. We will speak to God together even when we do not feel like it, especially when we do not feel like it, because love without discipline is just sentiment, and sentiment dies the first time you're tired. In the monastery refectory, Padre Pio barely ate. By 1950, he was eating 1 ounce of food per day. 1 ounce. He would sit at the table, take a few bites, and spend the rest of the time praying. Someone asked him why he did not eat more. He said, I wish the day had 48 hours so I could pray more rosaries. He understood something most people do not. Food is necessary, but prayer is more necessary. The body needs to eat, but the soul needs to speak to God. And if you feed the body but starve the soul, you have accomplished nothing. This is why Padre Pio emphasized the table, not because food is sacred, because the table is where family happens. It is where you stop. It is where you sit. It is where you see each other. And if you do not use that time to pray, you have wasted the most important moment of the day. Think about it. How many times do you see your family in one day? In the morning, everyone is rushing. At work, at school, everyone is separate. In the evening, everyone is exhausted. But at the table, for 15 minutes, maybe 30, everyone is in one place, at the same time, within arm's reach. That is the moment. That is when you have their attention. That is when you can say, before we eat, we pray. Before we feed our bodies, we feed our souls. Before we talk about our day, we talk to God. That simple act, repeated daily, builds something money cannot buy. It builds presence. It builds memory. It builds the knowledge that this family belongs to God first and to each other second. Padre Pio knew this because he lived it. Every meal in the monastery was preceded by prayer. Every meal ended with prayer. Not long prayers, not elaborate speeches. Simple, direct. Thank you, God, for this food. Bless the hands that prepared it. Bless those who are hungry and have nothing. Amen. Done. 30 seconds, maybe less. But those 30 seconds remind you that nothing is yours. Everything is gift. The food, the family, the breath in your lungs, all gift. And if you do not acknowledge the giver, you start thinking you earned it. You start taking it for granted. You start believing that family is automatic, that love is guaranteed, that presence is optional. And then one day you wake up and everyone is gone. Not physically, spiritually. You're sitting at the same table with the same people, but you are alone. Because you never built the bridge. You never made the connection. You never said, this matters. You matter. God matters. Let's stop and remember that together. One of Padre Pio's confessors, Father Agostino, wrote in his diary that Padre Pio's whole day was a continuous dialogue with God. In the choir, in the refectory, walking, resting, bleeding, always talking to God, always praying. But the most important prayer was not the one he said alone. It was the one he said with others, in community, in the presence of his brothers, at the table, in the chapel, together. Because Padre Pio knew that when you pray alone, you strengthen yourself. But when you pray with your family, you strengthen the bond. You remind each other why you are together. You invite God into the space between you. And that space is where love lives. From 1918 until 1968, Padre Pio spent between 10 and 12 hours a day in the confessional. 10 to 12 hours, hearing sins, giving counsel, reading souls. He could tell when someone was lying. He could tell when someone was holding back. He could see their past. He could see their future. And in all those years, one pattern kept repeating. People coming to him about their families. My husband doesn't talk to me anymore. My wife is distant. My children don't respect me. My parents don't understand me. My marriage is cold. My home is empty. Over and over, different people. Same problem. The family is breaking. And when Padre Pio asked, when do you pray together as a family? The answer was always the same. We don't. We used to. Back when the kids were small. Back when we had time. But now everyone is busy. Now everyone has their own life. Now it's just not realistic. Padre Pio did not accept that. He said, you have time to eat together. You have time to sit in front of the television together. You have time to argue together. But you don't have time to pray together? You are lying to yourself. The problem is not time. The problem is priority. You have made family convenient instead of sacred. You have made love conditional instead of committed. You have made prayer optional instead of essential. And now you are surprised that everything is falling apart. This is the thing Padre Pio would say that nobody wanted to hear. You cannot lose what you never built. If your family is distant, it is because you never made them close. If your children do not know God, it is because you never introduced them. If your marriage is cold, it is because you never made it warm. And you make it warm by doing the small things consistently, like praying together, like sitting at the table, like saying, this family belongs to God and we will act like it. One man confessed to Padre Pio in 1960. He said his teenage son was rebellious, would not go to church, would not listen, would not obey. Padre Pio asked, when was the last time you prayed with him? The man said, when he was little, maybe 10 years ago. Padre Pio said, you stopped praying with him and now you're surprised he stopped praying? You abandoned your post, you stopped leading. You expected the church to do your job, and now you want me to fix what you broke. I cannot fix it, but you can. Go home. Tell him you were wrong. Ask him to pray the rosary with you. Just once. Just one rosary. And when he says no, because he will say no, you pray it anyway. Out loud, in front of him, every night, until he joins you. The man did not like that answer. He wanted something easier, a prayer card, a relic, a quick miracle. Padre Pio gave him none of those things. He gave him the truth. You are the Father. This is your responsibility. Stop waiting for someone else to save your son. You save him by being present, by praying, by showing him that God matters more than his rebellion. The man left angry, but he obeyed. Every night for 2 months, he knelt in the living room and prayed the rosary out loud. His son ignored him, walked past him, made fun of him. But the father kept praying, and on the 63rd night, the son sat down. He did not say anything, he just sat and listened. And after 10 minutes, he left. The next night, he sat again, and the next. And on the 80th night, he picked up the beads and prayed with his father. They finished the rosary. The son stood up and said, "I'm sorry," and walked away. They prayed together every night after that, for 30 years until the father died. The son is still praying. He has children now. And every night they pray together. Because his father showed him that love is not a feeling. It is a commitment. And that commitment is renewed every single day at the same time in the same place with the same prayer. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Padre Pio heard the news and broke down in tears. Another priest asked if he would pray for Kennedy's soul. Padre Pio said, "It's not necessary, he's already in paradise." How did he know? Because Padre Pio could see. He could see the state of souls, he could see where they were going, and he could see what was happening to families who stopped praying. He saw children growing up without knowing God. He saw husbands and wives drifting into separate worlds. He saw tables that used to hold prayer becoming places of silence and resentment. And he knew what that meant. It meant the next generation would not believe. It meant the church would shrink. It meant families would break, not from hatred, from neglect, from the slow erosion of presence. This is not dramatic. This is mathematics. If you do not pass something on, it dies. If you do not teach your children to pray, they will not pray. If you do not show them that God matters, they will assume he does not. And when they leave your home, they will leave God behind. And you will wonder where you went wrong. Padre Pio told his spiritual children that he loved them as much as his own soul, even more. He said once he took on a spiritual child, he took on their entire family. He made a promise, "I will stand at the gates of heaven, and I will not enter until I see all of my spiritual children enter." That is how seriously he took it. Not just your soul, your family's soul. He wrote thousands of letters, gave spiritual direction to hundreds of people, confessed sins for 12 hours a day. And in every conversation, the message was the same. Pray. Pray together. Do not let the world take you. Do not let silence win. One woman wrote to him about her marriage. She said her husband had stopped talking to her, stopped praying, stopped going to Mass. Padre Pio wrote back, "Pray for him. Do not stop, even if he does not change. Even if he does not notice. Pray. Your prayers will reach him when your words cannot." She did. 5 years later, her husband returned to the sacraments. She wrote to Padre Pio again. He wrote back, "See? Prayer works. Never stop. This is the key. You cannot control your family. You cannot force them to pray. But you can pray for them, and you can create the space where prayer happens. You can sit at the table and fold your hands and speak to God before you eat. You can invite them into that moment. And even if they resist, even if they roll their eyes, you are planting something. You are showing them that God is present, that love requires something more than coexistence, that family is not just blood, it is covenant. Padre Pio's family prayed the rosary every night, every single night, no exceptions. They were farmers. They worked from sunrise to sunset. They had no money, no education, but they had discipline. And that discipline saved Francesco's soul. Because when he left home at 15 to join the Capuchins, he did not cry. His family did not cry. Why? Because he had seen Jesus and Mary in a vision the night before. They told him they would be with him. He believed them, because his family had taught him to believe. That is what happens when you pray. You teach your children to believe in what they cannot see. You teach them that God is real, that he listens, that he cares. And when they leave your home, they carry that with them. But if you do not pray, they learn the opposite. They learn that God is an idea, a nice story, a tradition for old people. And when life gets hard, they will not turn to him, because you never showed them how. Padre Pio said, "The life of a Christian is nothing but a perpetual struggle against self. There is no flowering of the soul to the beauty of its perfection except at the price of pain." Translation, this is not easy. Praying as a family is not convenient. Your kids will complain. Your spouse might resist. You will be tired. You will feel awkward. You will wonder if it's worth it. It is worth it. Because the alternative is what Padre Pio saw. Families falling apart one dinner at a time, one skipped prayer at a time, one silent meal at a time, until nobody remembers how to talk to God or each other. And here is what nobody tells you. Once you lose it, it's almost impossible to get back. Once your children grow up without prayer, once they leave your home without ever seeing you kneel, once they learn that God is optional, you cannot undo that. You can try, you can pray for them, you can hope, but you cannot give them back the foundation you never built. This is why Padre Pio was so insistent, so urgent, so uncompromising, because he saw the end result. He saw the adult children who came to him in confession saying, "My parents never taught me to pray. They never took me to church. They never made God real. And now I don't know how to believe. I don't know how to have faith. I want to, but I don't know where to start." And Padre Pio would have to start from zero, teaching a 30-year-old man how to pray like a child, teaching a 40-year-old woman how to hold rosary beads for the first time. It could be done. It was being done, but it was so much harder, so much more painful than if the parents had just done their job 20 years earlier. You cannot get that time back. You cannot make up for 20 years of silence with one rosary. You cannot make up for 20 years of distance with one dinner. You cannot erase 2 decades of neglect with one conversation. This is not about perfection. This is about starting tonight, right now, and then doing it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Making it a habit, making it non-negotiable, making the table sacred again, because your children are watching, always watching, not listening to what you say, watching what you do. And if you say God matters but never pray, they learn God doesn't matter. If you say family is important but never make time, they learn family is negotiable. If you say love is sacrifice but never sacrifice convenience, they learn love is conditional. They learn what you show them, not what you tell them. And if you show them that prayer is something you do when you feel like it, when you have time, when it's convenient, they will grow up thinking faith is a hobby, an interest, something you can pick up or put down depending on your mood. But if you show them that prayer is non-negotiable, that the table is sacred, that speaking to God comes before speaking to each other, they will grow up knowing faith is not a feeling, it's a foundation. And when life gets hard, when tragedy strikes, when everything falls apart, they will know where to turn, because you showed them. Call your family to the table. Say grace, even if it's awkward, even if nobody wants to. Fold your hands, bow your head, speak to God out loud, thank Him for the food, ask Him to bless your family. Keep it short if you have to. But do it, then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Make it a habit, make it non-negotiable, make the table sacred again. Because Padre Pio was right. Society does not pray. That is why it is falling apart. Your family does not have to fall apart, but you have to choose. You have to act. You have to decide that presence matters more than convenience. In Padre Pio's lifetime, he celebrated Mass thousands of times. He heard confessions from hundreds of thousands of people. He prayed the rosary 35 times a day, 35 full rosaries. That is 525 Hail Marys every single day for 50 years. He did not do this because he was special. He did it because he knew prayer was the only thing holding the world together, the only thing keeping families from disintegrating, the only weapon strong enough to fight the silence. And when he died, he was still holding his rosary. That is the image Padre Pio left us. A man who bled for 50 years. A man who saw heaven and hell. A man who knew the future. And in his last moment, he was not holding money, not holding power, not holding comfort. He was holding the same prayer his mother taught him at the table in Pietrelcina when he was 5 years old. That prayer saved him. It can save you. It can save your family. But only if you pray it, together, out loud, at the table, tonight. Padre Pio is not here to tell you, but his life is the evidence. His wounds are the testimony. His last breath is the warning. Do not let love be replaced by silence. Do not let your family forget how to pray. Do not let the table become just a place where people eat and leave. Make it sacred. Make it loud. Make it a place where God is welcome. Because where God is not welcome, love cannot survive. And when love dies, the family dies. Not with a shout, with a whisper. With one more skipped prayer, one more silent meal, one more day where nobody says his name. Padre Pio saw this. He warned us. He showed us the way. He left the rosary in our hands. Now it's your move.